He woke up on a desolate beach. The salty waves crashed heavily against the rocky shore. White foam hissed as it receded over the wet sand. He lay there, washed ashore like a piece of forgotten driftwood. Sand clung tightly to his pale, exhausted face. He struggled to open his heavy eyelids against the glaring sun. In the distance, blurred figures caught his attention. 2 young children were playing innocently in the sand. Their backs were turned, unaware of his presence. He tried to speak, coughing up bitter seawater. His trembling hands gripped a rifle hidden beneath the sand. Suddenly, an armed guard in uniform pointed a weapon directly at him. The scene shifted to a grand Japanese-style estate on a cliff. Inside, 2 guards spoke in hushed, urgent tones. They reported that the delirious man had spoken a specific name. An unseen master ordered them to bring the prisoner forward. The guards stepped aside respectfully to follow the command. They approached a bald, elderly man sitting in absolute silence. The guard presented the meager belongings found on the stranger. He placed a small, metallic spinning top on the wooden table. The elderly man stared intently at the peculiar object. He slowly lifted his head, his eyes reflecting deep, ancient memories. The captive man was aggressively dragged into the dining room. He sat down and took a tired, mechanical bite of his food. He chewed slowly, his face etched with unimaginable exhaustion. He looked up and asked the old man if he was there to kill him. The elderly man continued to observe him without saying a word. The old man's gaze fell back down to the spinning top. He carefully picked the top up with his trembling fingers. He whispered that he knew exactly what this object was. He stated that he had seen one just like it before, many years ago in a different lifetime. The metallic top spun perfectly on the flat surface. He recalled meeting a man in a half-remembered dream, a man possessed of radical and highly dangerous notions. The scene flashed back to a much younger Cobb. Cobb asked what the most resilient parasite in the world was. He suggested it might be a bacteria or a deadly virus. Arthur tried to clarify Cobb's strange and abstract metaphor, but Cobb interrupted. An idea is incredibly resilient and highly contagious. Once it takes hold in the brain, it is almost impossible to eradicate. Saito asked if someone like Cobb could actually steal an idea. Arthur explained that this psychological theft is known as extraction. Cobb offered to train Saito's subconscious to defend itself. Because Cobb claimed to be the absolute most skilled extractor, he knew exactly how to navigate the mind's hidden tricks. He insisted that Saito must be completely open and vulnerable with him. He needed to know Saito's thoughts better than anyone else could. He needed to know what secrets were locked inside Saito's mental safe. For the protection to work, Saito had to let him in completely. Saito blinked slowly, pondering the dangerous and invasive proposition. He stood up gracefully and wished the gentleman a pleasant evening. Cobb realized immediately that Saito knew they were tricking him. He quickly asked his team what was happening upstairs in the real world. He checked his watch nervously as their precious time ran out. The second hand ticked loudly toward the inevitable deadline. Suddenly, a massive explosion ripped through the city street. The dreamer, Yusuf, closed his eyes in deep, painful concentration. Arthur rushed into the apartment room. Pushing the heavy door open, he found Cobb sleeping peacefully on the leather couch. Arthur approached the window to see the fiery chaos outside. Another violent blast shook a distant building to its core. Sweat dripped down Arthur's tense and worried forehead. He moved quickly to wake the other sleeping team members. The clock continued its relentless, unforgiving ticking. Down in the dream, Saito laughed at their failed attempt. Cobb insisted that he could still get the secret from the safe. He ordered Arthur to head back to the hotel room immediately. Cobb walked past chatting guests in the elegant, warm hallway. He approached a beautiful woman standing near the open balcony. It was Mal, his deceased wife. Looking as stunning as ever, she asked him what he was doing here in this dangerous place. Cobb told her firmly that he still loved her deeply, but he admitted he could no longer trust her actions. He looked at the modern paintings hanging on the wall. Noting that the art reflected the subject's specific taste, he politely asked Saito to take a seat across from him. Cobb kneeled and secretly tied a rope to a heavy chair leg. Mal asked him if their children missed her absence. Cobb replied with sorrow that he simply could not imagine it. Suddenly, he drew his pistol smoothly from his waistband. Mal watched him with a dangerous, unpredictable glint in her eye. Cobb casually claimed he was just getting some fresh air. He warned Mal to stay exactly where she was standing. Without hesitation, he leaped backward out of the high window. He rappelled down the building's exterior using the hidden rope. He cursed loudly as the rope tightened painfully around his hands. He peered cautiously into the target room, holding his gun ready. He fired his weapon at an unseen enemy lurking in the dark. He carefully stepped into the lavishly decorated silent room. He fired another shot to completely secure the area. He swiftly opened a wooden drawer in the desk. He retrieved a highly confidential envelope containing the secret. Suddenly, he turned and pointed his gun forward defensively. Mal and Saito stood in the corridor, facing Cobb directly. Mal pointed her gun directly at Saito's vulnerable head. She smiled wickedly and told Cobb to drop his weapon. Cobb realized he was beaten and slowly lowered his gun. He placed the weapon on the table and sat down in defeat. Saito demanded the stolen envelope back immediately. Cobb realized Saito had known their plan all along. Saito mocked him for thinking he could easily steal from him. He questioned whether they were actually asleep right now. Saito demanded to know the name of Cobb's hidden employer. Cobb told Mal there was no use, threatening a man in a dream. But Mal argued that while death wakes them up, pain is very real. She coldly shot Saito in the leg without hesitation. Saito screamed in absolute agony as he fell to the ground. Mal stated that pain is entirely generated in the mind. She deduced they were currently inside Arthur's mind. Arthur suddenly collapsed to the floor in the dream. The dream world started to become highly unstable. Objects around the room began to float weightlessly in the air. Arthur told them they could not hurt him in his own dream. Arthur ran down the crumbling hallway as things shattered. He fired his gun to fight off the attacking projections. The entire structure of the dream began to violently break apart. Cobb held the confidential file, watching the chaos unfold. They woke up in the first dream layer, the dilapidated apartment. Cobb accused Saito of withholding critical information. Saito had intentionally kept a secret to test their abilities. Saito revealed the entire operation was merely an audition. Cobb claimed they successfully extracted the necessary data. Saito laughed, noting that the deception was incredibly obvious. Outside, the violent riot intensified rapidly. A car exploded into a massive fireball on the street below. In reality, Arthur and Saito were sleeping peacefully on a train. The countdown timer on the device ticked away the final seconds. The high-speed bullet train roared across the metal tracks. Back in the apartment, Cobb grabbed Saito violently by the collar. He pinned him to the ground, demanding to know the truth. Saito merely laughed a deep, rumbling laugh in response. He told Cobb that he had always hated this specific carpet, because its stains and frays were very distinctive. He knew the real carpet in his apartment was made of wool, but right now, he felt cheap polyester beneath his fingers. He smiled and declared that he was still dreaming. The timer reached absolute zero. The kick was successfully initiated. Yusuf snapped awake, gasping desperately for air. Saito jolted upright on the train seat, confused. Arthur woke up, completely disoriented from the sudden jump. Cobb woke up, utterly frustrated with the failed mission. Arthur yelled at the architect for messing up the carpet details. The architect whined defensively that it wasn't his fault. Arthur insisted that he had the dream perfectly under control. Cobb ignored them, stating he was getting off at Kyoto. He grabbed his bag, annoyed at the whole chaotic situation. He told the team that it was now every man for himself. Cobb walked quickly down the narrow aisle of the train. Cobb sat alone in his dimly lit hotel room in Tokyo. He stared at his spinning top, a vital tool to verify reality. He checked his handgun, making sure it was fully loaded. The top spun flawlessly on the smooth table surface. He eventually stopped the top and placed it in a black box. His phone rang suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. He heard the sweet, innocent voices of his young children. A rare, gentle smile spread across his tired, worn face. He asked his son James how he was doing back home. His daughter asked the heartbreaking question of when he would return. Cobb's smile faded completely as he struggled to answer her. He lied, saying he was away on a long work trip. He asked to speak to their grandmother, seeking an adult voice. But the grandmother adamantly refused to talk to him. He painfully reminded his son that Mommy was no longer with them. Defeated, he promised to send presents and gently hung up. He sat in the quiet room, drowning in profound sorrow. A sharp knock on the door interrupted his grieving. It was Arthur, telling him their ride was waiting on the roof. Cobb grabbed his bags, trying to hide his emotional pain. He admitted that Mal had ruined the dream mission again. They walked across the rooftop, discussing their escape plans. Arthur planned to lie low in Buenos Aires until things quieted down. They approached the waiting helicopter on the windy helipad. Inside the chopper, Saito was waiting for them with a smile. He anticipated they would try to flee from their failure. A brief scuffle broke out, but Cobb quickly calmed down. Cobb asked Saito exactly what he wanted from them now. Saito smiled and said the dangerous word, Inception. Arthur immediately declared the concept to be completely impossible. Saito asked why they could not plant an idea if they could steal one. Arthur used the elephant paradox to explain the difficulty. The mind always knows when an idea is not its own. But Cobb confidently stated that Arthur was entirely wrong. He looked Saito in the eye and asked what the job was. Saito offered him a choice to clear his criminal name. Saito asked Cobb if he truly wanted to go home. Back to America. Back to his beloved children. Cobb knew planting an idea was the most complex task imaginable. Saito explained his competitor was an old man whose son would inherit everything. He wanted the son to decide to break up the massive empire. Cobb demanded a rock-solid guarantee that Saito could clear his charges. Saito replied that Cobb would just have to take a leap of faith. Otherwise, he would become an old man filled with regret, waiting to die alone. Saito told Cobb to assemble his new team wisely. Cobb and Arthur boarded a private jet to start their impossible mission. The scene transitioned to the beautiful city of Paris at dawn. Cobb walked through an old arched gateway into a university. He found his father-in-law, a professor, sitting in a classroom. The professor remarked that Cobb never liked his cramped office. He asked Cobb if it was even safe for him to be in France. Cobb knew extradition laws made it a bureaucratic nightmare. He handed the professor a bag of stuffed animals for his kids. The professor sadly noted that toys wouldn't replace their father. Cobb defended himself, saying he was only doing what he was taught. The professor angrily retorted that he never taught him to be a thief. He asked Cobb what he was really doing back here. Cobb earnestly explained that he had finally found a way to go home. This new job was for powerful people who could fix his charges permanently. The professor accused him of coming to corrupt his best student. Cobb argued he offered them the chance to build entire impossible cities in dreams. The architect wouldn't enter the dream, they just designed the levels. The professor asked why Cobb didn't just design the mazes himself. Cobb's face darkened as he admitted that Mal wouldn't let him. The professor begged Cobb to come back to reality. He reminded him that his children waiting for him was the only reality. Cobb insisted this last job was his only ticket back to them. He reiterated his need for an architect as good as he used to be. The professor smirked and said he had someone even better. He introduced Cobb to a young, bright woman named Ariadne. Cobb took her to the roof and told her he had a test for her. He needed to know she had the raw talent for the job. He challenged her to draw a maze in 2 minutes that takes 1 minute to solve. Ariadne started sketching on the graph paper immediately. Cobb stopped her, finding her first attempt too simple. She tried again, drawing faster and with more complexity. But Cobb was still utterly unimpressed. Finally, she flipped to a blank page and drew a circular maze. Cobb smiled. This was exactly the kind of out-of-the-box thinking he needed. He brought her to an empty, sunlit warehouse to begin her training. He opened a silver briefcase containing the dream-sharing machine. In the dream, they sat at a quiet street cafe. Cobb explained how the sleeping mind can do almost anything. In dreams, creation and perception happen simultaneously. This allows them to hack the process and take over the creation part. Ariadne's job would be to meticulously create the world of the dream. While they are in it, the dream feels completely real. He asked her if she remembered how she got to this cafe. Ariadne looked around, confused, unable to recall her arrival. She gasped as she realized they were currently dreaming. To prove his point, the world around them began to explode. Debris shattered, but they remained completely unharmed in the chaos. Ariadne was terrified by the vividness of the destruction. She woke up in the warehouse, panting heavily in shock. She marveled at how incredibly real the pain and the environment felt. Fascinated by the experience, she asked to go back under for 5 more minutes. Cobb explained that brain function is significantly accelerated in dreams. 5 minutes in reality translates to an hour of dream time. Arthur pressed the button, and she fell back into the dream state. Cobb walked with her through a bustling city street they had created. He explained that the people around them were projections of his subconscious. By building a safe space, the subject's mind would automatically fill it with secrets. Ariadne began to experiment with the dream's physical laws. She effortlessly folded the entire city of Paris in half, creating a breathtaking, impossible mirror world in the sky. She smiled, amazed by her own god-like power of creation. They walked casually along the inverted street surface. The pedestrians suddenly stopped and stared fiercely at Ariadne. Cobb warned her that the subconscious was attacking her like a virus. The more she changed the world, the more aggressive they became. They hurried up a twisting staircase to escape the angry projections. Cobb could not control his own subconscious defenses. Ariadne pushed 2 large mirrors together to create an infinite reflection. She stepped through the glass, bending reality further. She touched a mirror on a bridge, and it shattered instantly. Cobb recognized the bridge. It was a real place from her memory. He got angry and sternly forbade her from ever building from memory. He explained that it blurs the line between dreams and reality. Suddenly, Mal appeared from the crowd. She viciously attacked Ariadne. Ariadne woke up screaming in panic. Cobb calmed her down in the real world. He explained she couldn't wake up because there was still time on the clock. Arthur told her she needed a totem, a unique weighted object. A totem helps differentiate dreams from absolute reality. Ariadne refused to open her mind to someone as unstable as Cobb. She angrily left the warehouse. But Cobb knew she would come back. Reality wouldn't be enough for her anymore. Cobb found Ames, a skilled forger in a crowded bar in Mombasa. Ames said planting an idea required making it extremely simple. It must feel completely self-generated by the subject to take root. They decided to base the Inception on Fisher's strained relationship with his father. Cobb asked Ames if he knew a good chemist for the job. Before they could leave, Cobalt engineering agents spotted Cobb. A frantic chase ensued through the narrow, crowded streets. Cobb fought off several armed men in close combat. He pushed his way through the dense market crowds. A gunman took aim, but Cobb barely escaped. Just as he was cornered, Saito pulled up in a car. Cobb dived into the vehicle, narrowly avoiding a hail of bullets. Saito smirked, claiming he was just protecting his investment. Back in Paris, Ariadne could not resist the lure of pure creation. Arthur taught her how to build paradoxical architecture. He demonstrated the Penrose steps, an infinite, closed-loop staircase. This trick would help hide the boundaries of the dream maze. A good maze gave them more time before the projections hunted them down. Ariadne asked why Cobb refused to design the layouts himself. Arthur admitted it was because of his dangerous projection of Mal. If Cobb knew the maze, then Mal knew the maze, and she would destroy them. In Mombasa, Cobb met Yusuf, the underground chemist. Cobb needed a compound stable enough for 3 layers of dreaming. Yusuf warned that a dream within a dream within a dream was highly unstable. Yusuf led them into a dark, damp basement filled with sleeping bodies. He explained that his sedative allowed them to dream for 40 hours a day. For these people, the dream world had become their only reality. They came to the basement not to sleep, but to wake up. The team gathered to review their target, Robert Fisher. Cobb explained the sheer gravity of performing Inception on him. Saito's company was the last defense against Fisher's total energy monopoly. They studied Peter Browning, Fisher's godfather and closest advisor. Ames planned to forge Browning's identity in the dream. Ariadne worked late, crafting her unique chess piece totem. She noticed Cobb secretly connecting himself to the dream machine. Cobb showed her Mal's spinning top, explaining its purpose. He strictly reminded her never to show him the specifics of her mazes. Ariadne confronted him about his inability to keep Mal out of the dreams. She warned him that his subconscious guilt was endangering the entire team. Cobb confessed he couldn't go home because the authorities thought he killed Mal. The team brainstormed how to translate a business strategy into a pure emotion. Ames suggested focusing on a positive catharsis rather than anger. They would plant the idea that his father wanted him to be his own man. Yusuf explained the incredibly powerful sedative they would use. Brain function is multiplied by 20 at each dream level. 10 hours in reality would equal 10 years in the 3rd dream level. To wake up from such deep sedation, they needed a synchronized kick. The feeling of falling would jolt them awake across all levels simultaneously. They needed a 10-hour flight on a 747 to execute the plan without interruption. Saito casually mentioned he just bought the entire airline. Ariadne secretly followed Cobb into his private dream space. He took her down an elevator that accessed his deepest memories. She saw him reliving the painful moments he regretted the most. He watched his children playing, forever frozen in the past. He was tortured by the fact that he never saw their faces before he fled. The elevator dropped to the lowest level, revealing a trashed hotel suite. Mal was there, questioning why Ariadne had intruded. Mal violently attacked the metal bars, screaming that Cobb promised to stay. Ariadne told Cobb he could not keep Mal locked away forever. She insisted on joining the mission to keep his subconscious in check. The team boarded the long flight to Los Angeles. Cobb slipped the sedative into Fisher's water glass. Fisher drank it and quickly fell into a deep sleep. The team activated the machine, entering Yusuf's rainy dream. Level 1 was a massive, pouring city. They successfully grabbed Fisher and forced him into a taxi. But they were suddenly ambushed. A train completely derailed their car. Armed mercenaries attacked them mercilessly. Fisher's subconscious was militarized. Saito was severely wounded during the chaotic shootout. Normally, dying in a dream wakes you up, but because of the heavy sedatives, dying would send them straight into limbo, an infinite void of raw subconscious, where their minds would be trapped for decades. Panic set in among the team, but they had to push forward. They put bags over Fisher's head and interrogated him. Ames disguised himself as a bruised and battered Peter Browning. He told Fisher that his father had a secret safe containing an alternate will to dissolve the company. They demanded a random combination from Fisher. He blurted out the numbers 528,491, with enemies closing in fast. They loaded into a white van. Yusuf stayed behind to drive and initiate the kick, while the rest descended to Level 2. Level 2 was Arthur's dream, a luxurious, pristine hotel. Cobb used the Mr. Charles Gambit. He approached Fisher at the bar. He told Fisher that he was dreaming, and that he was a subconscious security agent. To prove it, he manipulated the weather. Fisher started to believe him. They convinced Fisher that Browning betrayed him, and that Browning hired the kidnappers. to stop him from finding the real Will. They convinced Fisher to dive into Browning's mind, but they were actually going into Fisher's own subconscious. Arthur stayed behind to manage the hotel layer. The others entered Level 3. Level 3 was Ames's dream, a heavily fortified snow fortress. Fisher had to break into the vault to find the truth about his father. Meanwhile, synchronization began. The music played across all levels. In Level 1, Yusuf drove the van off a bridge, creating a sense of falling. This triggered zero gravity in Level 2. Arthur had to improvise quickly. He tied his sleeping teammates together and moved them into an elevator. He planned to blow the elevator cables to simulate gravity and trigger the kick. In the snow fortress, time was running out. Fisher finally reached the vault room, but Mal suddenly appeared. She shot Fisher point blank. Cobb failed to stop her in time. Fisher died and fell into limbo. Saito succumbed to his wounds and also died. The mission seemed completely lost, but Ariadne suggested a desperate plan. They would follow Fisher into limbo, find him, and revive him with a defibrillator kick. Cobb and Ariadne went under. They woke up on the shores of Limbo, a crumbling city of Cobb's memories. They found Mal in her old home. She tried to convince Cobb to stay by claiming this world was real, but Cobb finally confronted his guilt. He admitted he planted the idea in her mind. He accepted she was just a shade, not his real wife. Ariadne found Fisher and threw him off the balcony. To synchronize with the defibrillator shock above, Fisher revived in the snow fortress. He entered the vault room. Inside, he found his dying father. His father weakly told him he was disappointed, not because he didn't follow his footsteps, but because he tried to. Fisher opened the safe. He found his childhood paper pinwheel, a symbol of his father's hidden love. Catharsis washed over him. The Inception was complete. The kicks aligned perfectly. Ames detonated the fortress. Arthur dropped the elevator. Yusuf's van hit the water. Everyone woke up layer by layer, except for Cobb. He stayed behind in limbo to find Saito. He found Saito as a withered old man, waiting to die alone. Cobb spun the totem, reminding Saito of their agreement to take a leap of faith and come back to reality. Cobb awakened on the airplane. The mission was a success. Saito made a phone call, clearing Cobb's name. Cobb passed through immigration smoothly. He was welcomed home. He arrived at his house. He placed the spinning top on the table and spun it. But before he could watch if it fell, he saw his children playing in the garden. He embraced them, leaving the spinning top behind. Does it fall? The screen cut to black.